We'll wait for it to, the numbers to kind of level out before we begin. It looks like they're leveled out a little bit. So welcome everyone to our September Safety Council meeting. Hopefully we maybe halfway through, or not even, I guess we're not really halfway through yet at these meetings to where we can be in person, but welcome everyone and appreciate everyone calling in and attending these Zoom meetings. We do greatly appreciate it. So with that said, I have a couple curveballs today. The first one will be Mike McDormand will do the opening prayer, and then we'll move on with the meeting. Mike.
Okay, let's pray. Father, we just bow before you today, and Lord, we thank you for this time of year, a time when kids go back to school, when we look to all the fall colors. But Lord, we also think of this time of year as we endured a great loss 20 years ago on September 11th, Lord, and we remember those who lost loved ones. Lord, we want to remember what we lost as a country that day, and Lord, we just thank you that we did not stop there, but we continue forward, and as a country, Lord, as a people, and we just thank you for this place called Springfield, called Clark County. We thank you for the companies. We thank you for the people that make up those companies every day that they go to work, Lord. We pray that they go safely to work and they come home safely, Lord, as each of us would like to see every day. And Lord, we pray for our community as it seeks to move forward. And we just thank you so much for the many blessings that are happening right now, the momentum that's happening in our community. And we just pray for your continued touch on it, Lord, as we move forward. And we just thank you for this time together and pray for your blessing upon this meeting. In your name, amen.
Thank you, Mike. With that, I'll move over to the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All righty. Try to close out here. Okay. Just a few announcements before we get Jim and then our speaker on. One, we just had a side conversation before the meeting started that Clark County will be bringing 1,000 jobs to the community, hopefully in the near future. But that was a side note that we had. So I think that's a fantastic news to hear. So stay tuned to that as well. Jim, I'm sure may go into further detail, but just a reminder, next month is a mega meeting through the BWC. So we will not have our normal meeting. It'll be October 6th, Wednesday, October 6th, 11 o'clock to about noon. Jim may be able to have some additional information. There was a flyer information emailed to you as well. So just a reminder that next month is a Wednesday, October 6th, not our normal meet time. Our previous PowerPoints our previous meetings, the speakers had PowerPoints that were graciously enough to share their PowerPoints. We have uploaded those to our website. So the Safety Council website, if you go to the Chamber website and navigate through to the Safety Council tab, all the previous PowerPoints are uploaded. So if you have missed a meeting or have not or lost a PowerPoint that was forwarded to you, that information is on our website. So please go check that out. if you are missing one or need to review one. Last thing, I have a little update. I'm sure everyone has watched the news, knows that there's some new friction going on, or new focus going on with some mandates on vaccines. So the president has come out and said that any employer over 100 employees, basically mandating vaccines. It is very fresh and very new for those who are in the safety world. Government doesn't move quick. However, this will move faster than normal, maybe, but just still stay tuned. There's not much going on next to the announcement. You can always reach out to me. Shauna is going to be a resource, our speaker today as well, in the medical field. So if you have 100 or more employees, please continue to use good resources. We joked about not using Fox or CNN or MSNBC and all those other good news sources. Try to go to the source, go to osha.gov. Please reach out to myself. I'm sure Jim can also provide some information as well when it comes to progression with this whole new mandate. So everyone, please stay vigilant to what is going on, and get the right information. So with that said, I want to move the mic to Jim and any BWC updates that he may have.
All right, thanks, Doc. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for attending Safety Council. Yeah, I'll be quick. I just want to mention, since our speaker today is going to talk about transitional work, we have revamped our grant, and I'm sure Shauna Dunbar will talk more about that a little bit. But essentially, we removed the 3-to-1 matching, so we're pretty much paying for your entire transitional work program to be rewritten. And Shauna's group is one of those groups that does that. You can go to our website, you'll see there's about 65 groups that can do that for you. They cover the cost between $2,900 and $6,300. So like I said, I think that pretty much will cover it. You can get this grant every 5 years now. It used to be a one-time grant per policy. We've recognized that these transitional work programs need to be rewritten because obviously there's changes at your company. So all good news. There's no reason you shouldn't take advantage of that. And hopefully after today's presentation, you guys will jump on that if you don't have a program or your program's out of date. As far as upcoming webinars, we have one today. Hopefully you're registered for it. If not, you can still do that. It is at 10 a.m., so it's going to be pretty early, 10 to noon. It's called So You Had a Claim, Now What? So it's going to talk about best practices in claim management. Every division within the Bureau is going to talk about how they partake in claim and what you can do to help reduce the cost of those claims. And then our next one is going to be Tuesday, October 12th at our normal time, 11 to noon. And that's life cycle of a claim. So it's going to be a similar topic, again, a shorter version. I would say today's is going to be good. Now, if you can't attend today's, they do record those and they do post them in our learning center. And if you have any trouble navigating that, I put my contact information in the chat. You can always reach out to me. I hope you feel comfortable doing that. So again, with any of our learning center stuff, or any questions you have with safety, reach out to me. As far as our upcoming virtual classes, I mentioned that all of our classroom classes have been canceled through June of next year. I'm not sure whether we'll start doing classroom classes after that. We are moving more toward virtual services. That's going to be the trend. So we'll see. But as far as upcoming virtual classes, on Thursday, September 16th, we have a class on emergency preparedness and planning. That's a morning class. On September 28th and 29th, which is a Tuesday and a Wednesday, we have a class on health hazards and toxicology fundamentals. This is going to talk about workplace chemical exposures. Again, this is a fundamentals class. It's in the morning, so it's 2 days morning class. And then on Thursday, September 30th, we have a class in the morning on hazardous waste operations and emergency response. And finally, what I have is Monday, October 4th, we have a class in the morning on accident analysis. So if you have folks that do that, it might be a good opportunity for them to sit in. I will mention that if you go to our website and go to our events page, which is fairly easy to find, It talks about all our upcoming classes and employer webinars, so that you can check that out. I know that I run through this quickly and you're probably not going to remember, but again, reach out to me. My contact information's in the chat. As far as our next month mega meeting, I really don't have much to add. If you're confused by that, you do need to register. That will not get you credits for any of our discount programs. For example, if you attend one of our webinars or one of our virtual trainings, you get a credit. For this one, you don't, just because we don't have a way of knowing whether or not you're going to be on that. So other than if you register, but that doesn't tell us whether you sat through it. So that's the main thing I want to point out there. And that's all I have. Thank you so much for attending today.
All right. Thank you, Jim. I greatly appreciate it. Just a quick reminder, Jim did mention he's got his contact information in the chat box. There's a Q&A box as well, so please utilize that during our presentation. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask those and put those in the chat box or the Q&A box. We will all be monitoring that box. So the other curveball we are throwing at you is we are not talking about the falls or anything. Our normal topic is not today. So we had to throw a little curveball. The speaker had emergency surgery, so could not make it today. And Shauna has been humongously gracious to come in at last moment to help us out. So we were going to be discussing transitional work, if you haven't figured that out already. So just an introduction of Shauna. Our presenter, Shauna Dunbar, is a registered nurse certified in occupational health nursing. She has focused on improving employee health throughout her career. Now founder of and owner of Workplace Health Inc., Shauna works with employers to implement cost-effective strategies that improve employee health and productivity. Accommodating workers with transitional work or modified duty can be a challenge. So is it worth it? Today, Shauna is going to unpack some of these secrets she has learned throughout her 30-year career as she presents transitional work programs. Are they worth the effort? Please welcome Shauna. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for that nice introduction. It's my pleasure to be here today to talk to you all about transitional work programs. I think transitional work can be one of the most cost-effective programs any size business can use. How many of you are frustrated when an injury occurs? I mean, you put all this time and energy into your safety programming, and then a work accident happens. And it's time consuming, the paperwork, finding a provider, getting that employee back to work, finding the employee a job to do. It's terribly time consuming and it can ruin your whole day, right? Well, I want to introduce myself. As Justin said, I am a registered nurse, and different than an RN who works one-on-one, I'm also a public health nurse. And public health nurses, we've gotten a lot of attention this last couple of years, but we work with populations of people. And as a certified occupational health nurse, the population I work with is from hired to retired, those of you that are working. And the focus is about improving health and productivity in the workforce through programming. And I want to tell you, in my career, I started what I like to say, tending to the sick and wounded in industry as I managed a medical department at a manufacturing facility. So I managed a lot of work-related injuries. Throughout my career, I've been very involved in injury care. And what I've learned is when there's a work-related injury, it's not just about what happened or how it happened, but it's the care management that goes along with it. And employers, you have a lot of opportunity to make this work in your favor and favorably for that injured worker, or you have an opportunity to kind of ignore some of the things that you have in place. The thing I like about the transitional work program is it gives you a roadmap of exactly what to do as you manage these claims and can really help you out a lot. I am going to be talking about a lot of information. I don't know if any of you are familiar with this tool called Kiwi Live, but I have an action, an action toolkit for you that all you have to do is go to kiwilive.com and enter the word health, and that will give you access to my PowerPoint presentation and this toolkit that I put together for you. So if you miss any of these, some of the things that I'm talking about, you can access it there. So let's begin. Before I dive into what is transitional work and how it can help you, I really want to make sure you all understand how the money flows in workers' compensation. Most of you know that workers' compensation, you pay a premium to the insurance company. This is true across the country. Every state has its own workers' compensation laws. In the state of Ohio, we have the Ohio BWC that's insuring most of us, most businesses in workers' compensation. And that premium is based on two things, right? It's based on the number of employees that you have and the risk of the job and how much payroll you have. We know that. And then it's also the frequency and severity of the claims. So, frequency, the number of the claims, and severity, meaning how expensive is this claim for your company. The premium is based in Ohio on the last 5 years of experience. And you pay for 5 years as an employer, but the BWC is responsible for that claim for the whole life of the claim. So they have an opportunity to capture your premium for 5 years. But if that claim goes on 30 years, the insurance company or the Ohio BWC pays for the life of the claim. So just want to make sure we're all on the same page with that. The other thing that's kind of unique to workers' compensation benefits is that it's a no fault system. Different than if you pay for your auto insurance, right? Auto insurance happens, an accident happens, and what do they first thing they have to decide is whose fault is it, and that insurance company pays. In workers' compensation, way back when the laws were first put together, they decided it takes too much litigation to figure out whose fault it is. Sometimes workplace accidents just happen. So they created this no fault system. But it does have to be a compensable claim. And I say this to you because whose responsibility is it to determine if a claim is compensable? It's the employer responsibility. You guys have the responsibility to really dive in to find out what happened and was it actually caused by work. So, for example, if I have back pain at work, anybody had back pain? Right? You have back pain, it just happens to happen at work, doesn't mean that you have a work injury. You have to, there's a note I have here, work-related injury, AOE, COE. It's one of the criteria that we learned about how to kind of determine is it compensable or not. So AOE means did it arise out of employment? CO means during the course of employment. Arise out of employment during the course of employment. If it meets both of those criteria, generally we say it's compensable. But it is no fault. If there's no dispute, there's limited liability, meaning that you don't really need to have an attorney involved because there's no dispute. It's not like an auto claim where there's might be a dispute of whose fault it is. We have no fault. And they did that specifically so that would reduce litigation. But as we all know, employees can choose to litigate, right? And once a claim is deemed compensable, you get these certain benefits, right? The medical costs are paid, indemnity costs or the time lost from work is paid with temporary total disability. There sometimes is even permanent disability if we can't make you medically 100%. We know that the medical costs are things like provider exams, X-ray, MRI, CT scans, physical therapy, right? Things like that. And those are just direct medical costs that get paid. If you lose time from work, right, then temporary total kicks in. If you want to use the chat, just let me know. Lost time injury in the state of Ohio is after how many days? And while you're filling in the chat, and Justin and some of the other folks can kind of keep an eye on that, how many days does it become a lost time claim? This is important because, OSHA, if you miss more than the day of injury, you have to put that on your OSHA log, correct? But workers' comp is a little different. when I worked as a nurse in California, they had a 3-day waiting period, meaning if you got injured on Thursday afternoon, you went to the doctor and they said, just take the weekend off. We'll, go back to work on Monday. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, you became a lost time claim. So it was really important that we focus on how long somebody's been off work. So let's see what the chat says. 7 days, that's right. So after 7 days of disability, then the temporary total kicks in. Why is that important? I'm going to show you. When that is more than 7 days, it's like a severe light goes on. And let me just tell you, as an occupational health nurse managing many of these claims and having a department where we could do, take care of all kinds of different things, it was rare, even in California, that we couldn't get somebody back to work within 3 days. We only had 3 days to work with. In Ohio, 7 days is a very long time. If you can't get an employee back to work within 7 days, I would encourage you to, either it really was severe, like this x-ray is showing somebody broke their clavicle and, maybe needs surgery and things like that. But a simple, straightforward sprain or strain or something like that, you should be able to get that employee back to work within 7 days. When a claim is considered severe, the severe light goes on. The thing that is most important for you to understand is that is when the reserves are set. Remember, I told you, and this is true throughout the country in any state with workers' compensation, that the insurance company pays for the life of the claim. And when the severity light is turned on, usually that's when the reserves are set. And reserves are set to hold into, an account attached to that claim to pay for the claim for the life of the claim. So let me just give you a simple example to help you understand how this works, okay? So let's say you have a lost time claim. Somebody has a back strain. You've done your due diligence. You've done a great safety investigation, and you're saying, yes, this back sprain I do think is related to the kind of work that this employee did. And there's some medical costs. Physical therapy is appropriate, some medical costs. They're going to see the doctor a few times. Let's just say that doctor, you don't have a return to work policy. You don't have any transitional work. Your philosophy is, that's why we have insurance, right? They should stay off work because the insurance will pay their temporary total disability while they're off. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to let workers' comp pay. That's true. You can have workers' compensation pay. They'll pay, let's say it works out to be an average wage of $600 a week. That employee's off work for a month. $2,400 goes into indemnity costs. Now, in this case, because I've seen these cases many times in my career, let's say that person comes back to work after a month and they're totally fine. They never need services again. They're 100%. But because they lost time from work, severity is turned on. And the reserves are calculated in an algorithmic, using artificial intelligence, right? This algorithm, I think the last I heard, there's maybe over 100 or 150 different data points that they enter into the reserves, and boom, it spits out a number. And let's just say they say there's $30,000 that's set in reserves on this claim because they're concerned that this person might have issues later. Let's say they're an older worker or something like that. Well, when the reserves are turned on, you end up paying as if you spent the $30,000. So over 5 years, you might end up adding, over $100,000, $150,000 to your premium. So let's just say you have a return to work plan in place. You've got a nice structured roadmap in your transitional work program to say, we want to accommodate as many workers as we can after injury. So the medical costs are not going to change, right? You still need those medical costs, but the biggest thing is there's no indemnity. There's no temporary total paid. You're rehabbing this employee on the job. There's no severity turned on. You don't have reserves set. So unless for some reason the medical costs go crazy, which in a sprain they really shouldn't, you're not going to pay any extra reserve costs. So which would you rather have, where you're spending $150,000 potentially over 5 years, or $5,000 over 5 years? Of course, we'd rather get that employee back to work. Now, I have simplified this. I know sometimes TPAs get a little like, well, what about this? What about that? What about that? I just want you to understand the concept. I'm very much simplifying it. There, we all know that there's other things that can go into affect a workers' comp claim, but I want you to just make sure that you're understanding the concept, okay? So the bottom line is getting workers back to work will keep those employees working and productive. And how many of us are kind of scrambling trying to find good employees right now? And yes, sometimes it's those good employees that have an injury. We need to keep them working and productive. Want to remind you, Kiwi Live is where you can get a toolkit on all this, which goes into more detail about this information. Just put in the keyword health, and you can access all these the action plan that I put together. Okay, let's see if we have any questions before I continue going into a little bit more information about our transitional work programs. Worth it. I don't see any more in the chat right now, so I'm going to continue. Please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A or the chat, because we will be stopping periodically to check on that, okay? So what is transitional work? I love comparing it to baseball. We all know, I don't know about any of you are Indians fans, but up here in the Cleveland area, we are Indians fans, and boy, they've had trouble this year, haven't they? They've had so many injuries. And what happens is those guys, before they come back into the majors and play a major league game, they're going to do their rehab in the minor leagues, aren't they? They're going to maybe not throw as hard if they had a shoulder injury, or maybe they're not going to run the bases as fast as they possibly can because they had some kind of a, ankle sprain or something like that. And transitional work is really no different. We're just asking your employees to kind of go down into the minor leagues for a period of time before they get back to their usual and customary job. So it's a worksite program for workers with physical restrictions. I don't really like the term light duty. That's one of my pet peeves. If I have a provider I'm working with and they return somebody to work light duty, what the heck does that mean? I have no idea what that means. And you shouldn't be accepting that kind of language either. Modified duty and transitional work needs to document exactly what can that injured worker do. Let's look at their ability, not what's wrong with them, but what can they do? One of my favorite things when I have a group of nurses, we're all in occupational health nurses, and we sometimes will attend doctor's appointments, for example, as case managers to a work-related injury. One of my favorite things to ask, especially if somebody's been taken off work for like a sprain or strain, that I'm like, what else could they be doing something else? I'll ask the doctor, so you've taken this employee off work? Well, yes. I go, so they're on complete bed rest? And of course the physician's like, no, they should be moving. And, muscle injuries, they need to move. It's like, well, what can they do then? Please document what they can do. Now I can work with the employer to find suitable work for that person. You're progressing the worker back to a very specific job, but it's time limited and individualized. One of my favorite stories is about it was a sponge manufacturing company. I don't know if any of you have been in a sponge manufacturing, but it's kind of dusty and dirty, and it was hot. They didn't have any, they had some fans, but you know what the heat of the day can be like, right? In the middle of the summertime. And they were having a problem of everybody's on light duty, and they are on light duty forever and ever. We can't get them off light duty. So you know how a picture's worth 1,000 words. So I had to go to the plant. I needed to see what they were doing. And in this dusty, kind of dirty environment, I look over in the middle of the manufacturing floor is a glassed in kind of, if you will, a fishbowl, right? In the center of the room. And I went in there, and they're like, oh, this is where all of our light duty people are. And there were tables. It was clean. The air conditioner was blowing. It was this beautiful, comfortable environment where people were just doing some simple assembly work on these tables and chatting and kind of, having a nice time. And I'm like, well, it's no wonder this was their light duty area. Well, if you had a choice of working in that kind of environment or in the dusty, noisy, kind of other environment, they were positioning themselves to make it more attractive to be on light duty. And so it was psychologically hard to bring those workers back into the regular workforce. And it does help if you have very good policies written out about the being time limited and individualized. I think that I saw we may have had a question. Bringing people back to work, the doctor's keeping people off for sprains and strains. I know they keep them off for weeks, and you're like, what is wrong with this picture? And you've had several transitional work opportunities that the workers can do, but the provider keeps them off. What's the incentive for the provider to keep them off? I could give you a whole lecture about that, but there is lots of incentives for those. Do you have any suggestions on how we can communicate to the provider to get people back faster? Number one, have a nice roadmap on your transitional work program. Say, we have a transitional work program. Make sure that provider understands. Tell me, what is the reason they cannot come back to work? You're paying that provider. That provider is a BWC certified provider. If you look on the back of your Medco 14, there's a whole list of rules that those providers have to follow, and your MCO should be able to help you with this. Say, look, we expect you to follow the rules. We need to know this employer has a transitional work program. I need to know very specifically why this employee is off work. Kind of like I say, when I'm in front of that provider and saying, so they're on complete bed rest? Well, of course not. Nobody's on complete bed rest. They are things that they can do and they're doing at home. You need to get them to document that for you. So I would just say, be a little bit more persistent. Okay. There's some other return to work strategies that you can employ besides just modifying the regular job that they have. You can actually modify the work schedule. Sometimes I've been successful. The employee can do 100% of the job, but maybe they only need work a half a day, like 4 hours a day. And we slowly transition them back to 8 or 10 or 12 hours a day. You can also create a specific modified job list. That's one of the things I like to do when I go out on, job sites, when I develop functional job descriptions, which we'll get to in just a minute. As we're doing that, we identify jobs. For example, I ask the supervisors, if you had an extra pair of hands, who doesn't want an extra pair of hands? What would you have them do? Sometimes those are the things that they just don't get around to, and they're often some of the lighter criteria. So that's something that you can ask. Have any of you used the strategy of volunteer work? Instead of paying somebody their temporary total, you still continue their salary, but you have them show up at a volunteer. Like I have a company that likes to use the American Red Cross. Red Cross always needs people just checking people in. It's a seated duty position, but they have to kind of show up and make sure that they have some kind of routine to their schedule. People that stay in routine get better faster. And then don't forget about the training. The Ohio BWC has over, I think, 200 safety training videos. And I had one employer that just really was struggling finding work for this employee. And they made her part of the safety team and had her do some training and then share what she learned with others. This is what I think is so exciting. What is really included in the development? Well, I've already talked to you about the policies and procedures. You've got a much better roadmap, which can help you. But the other thing is the part of the grant program is developing functional job analyses. Those are the physical requirements of the job. How much bending, lifting, carrying, stooping, kneeling, all of that stuff. If you don't have that well outlined, it's hard to it's hard to talk to the physician to say, look, this is what this guy can do. this is his regular job, but I can accommodate things that are, maybe there's a part of the job that you identify. Can't they do A, B, and C if they can't do these two functions? So you need to have it clearly outlined, not just they lift 50 pounds, for example. And we establish a provider relationship. In the state of Ohio, we cannot direct medical care. Some states you can. In the state of Ohio, we can't. But that doesn't mean you can't have a preferred provider list. It's easier. It's actually better for that injured worker to work with somebody that understands the paperwork of BWC. Obviously, the care that you're getting is of the utmost importance, but in a workers' comp claim, the other thing that's super important is the paperwork. If you've got a great provider that has wonderful outcomes, but they don't know how to do the paperwork, that employee is going to struggle with getting the benefits that they need. So if you can help identify those providers that understand OSHA recordability issues and the importance of transitional work, and making sure that they understand you will find work for somebody to do, you want to put them on your preferred provider list. And there's also this employee and supervisor training that the BWC likes you to have, and I think it's great to be able to help remind people, look, we don't want anybody to have an accident or an injury, but if you do, we're here to take care of you, and this is how we want you to follow. And of course, one of the biggest things that I find most employers are not aware of, that the state of Ohio, again, in our insurance, workers' comp insurance system, is they're very much of a proponent of on-site therapy services. The photo over on the left is just demonstrating this, where we have an occupational therapist coming on site to work directly with that employee. So you can talk about body mechanics and ergonomics and that kind of thing. I also mentioned field nurse case management services, where you have a nurse case manager attending doctor or therapy appointments to find out. I told you a picture's worth 1,000 words. Maybe on paper it looks like, why is this person not back to work? But if you have somebody there kind of facilitating it, you can see, oh, this is what is holding them up. I've had situations where it had nothing to do with the injury at all. They just didn't have good transportation set up. So you can really identify some of those other key barriers to return to work. The other thing that I want to remind you of is, for a transitional work program, you can use this for work-related injuries or not. I have many of my clients that write their transitional work programs so that they have the opportunity to include non-work related injuries, especially, again, in this environment where retention of employees and recruitment of employees is so tight. We want to offer some some modified duty for non-occupational injuries also. And I just put this slide here to talk to you about, musculoskeletal conditions are still the most costliest and growing rapidly group of diseases, even on the non-occupational side. And either way, when you have workers with health problems and there's inconsistent doctor restrictions, like I mentioned, they just say light duty, employers have real trouble working with getting those job modifications of the job. But if you have good job functions outlined, then you're going to do a much better job of getting those people back to work. So regardless if you decide to do transitional work programming or not, these are some of the things that you should make sure that you don't have gaps. What employers require of your worker with functional job descriptions, what providers understand about the jobs. Your functional job description is a great tool to communicate with those providers, and what workers are really safely capable of doing, which goes back to, what is the doctor restriction? What is that provider saying? And make sure you get good clarification. And again, this is for work-related or non-occupational. Okay. I'll check and see if there's any more in the chat. Not right now. Okay, so how are these deliverables used? I mean, obviously, we can use them when we're returning somebody back to work from a work-related injury. Again, your policy and procedures roadmap, exactly how to do that to keep those workers productive. You've got those functional job analyses. Yes, you can use them to return workers back from FMLA or from workers' compensation. Let me give you an example. Let's say you have somebody who's coming back from a knee replacement, and you notice that they're still limping, yet their physician said they can do the full job. You might want to consider putting that person on transitional work and work with their physician to make sure, do you understand that this is their job, and can they do all the duties of their job? Here's the functional job analysis, and make sure that they can do all the functions of the job. Or maybe they need to transition. It's my experience that most people, especially if they've been off work, several weeks or something like that, it's not one day they're 100% disabled and the next day they're 100% okay. Usually they need some kind of transition, and this will just help you. The other thing is, when you have a functional job analysis, you can use that in hiring practices. I can't say to somebody, is there something wrong with you that you can't do these job duties? But I can say, here are the job duties. Are you capable of of doing all the essential requirements of the job? So think about that. And also remember, during the analysis part of these jobs, you can identify ergonomic issues. And again, get those great relationships built with occupational health providers. I've been seeing a little bit of an uptick, and possibly because of our aging workforce, that employers are working with occupational health clinics more, sometimes when there's cognitive issues that they've identified. And of course, we all know that your OC health providers can help you with drug and alcohol issues if there's substance abuse identified and that kind of thing. So when you put a transitional work program together, these are all the things that you can put together as part of your program, but you can use them in lots of different ways. Okay, any other chats I'm not seeing right now, so I'm going to continue. Please feel free to, put your Q&As in there. Okay, so let's talk briefly about the benefits of the transitional work program. Well, I've already talked about the roadmap. It's much less time consuming if you know exactly what steps to follow. You're going to experience a smoother transition back to regular duty, and that is for that injured worker and for the supervisor. You want to start sending the message, if somebody has a work-related injury, that the assumption is they're coming back to work to their full duty job. Have you ever worked with, even with your children, you want to set the expectations, right? And sometimes people will, children will actually do what is expected of them if it's clearly outlined. It's the same thing with employees. If your whole messaging is about, we expect you to get back to work, in a timely manner, that's what's going to happen. And the job skills stay current. I don't know if you've noticed, but I, even with because of the pandemic and people working from home and transitioning back into the workplace, there's been some like, oh, I have to relearn how to do things back in the workplace that I was doing in my home office, so keeping that routine going will help those job skills stay current. And of course, maintaining work relationships can be a very strong motivator. The other thing that I've identified that I've brought up is this idea of hand-holding cases. If you have a case, I like to use the word squirrely, but you've set it all up that a case should just be like this and everybody should be on the same page, and you start having an outlier, like maybe you have them seeing a preferred provider and immediately they go find another provider that maybe doesn't understand that you have a transitional work program, or you start to see what I say get squirrely, like they were doing modified duty and they seem to be doing fine, and then all of a sudden they get a note from a doctor saying they're completely off work. You want to handhold those cases, and you can ask for a field case manager or on-site physical therapist to help you. And we know all of these reasons will help you reduce and contain those healthcare costs and workers' comp premiums. Because if you keep that person working, you don't have the reserve set, right? They don't become lost time. Those reserves don't get set. So you're going to keep those healthcare costs to a minimum. We keep those workers productive. The employee has less deconditioning, and they are going to recover more quickly. The more likely somebody is to stay in a routine, they're more likely to recover faster. And this goes for work-related or non-work related. Just another quick reminder that Kiwi Live and the keyword is health if you're interested in getting any of this information in my action kit. Okay, checking to see if there's any other chats right now. I don't see any, so I'm going to continue. You heard Jim talk about the grants, and some of you maybe have taken advantage of the grant BWC grant program in the past for transitional work, but in June of this year, they have kind of refunded the grant program, even if you've had a transitional work grant in the past. As long as it's been more than 5 years, you're eligible for this program. And these are all the things that we've talked about with transitional work. It will help you, if you have a program in place that'll help you decrease your costs, decrease that employee's deconditioning, decrease your replacement costs, increase productivity. They're going to recover faster. You're going to build healthcare provider relationships. You have an opportunity to develop job analyses that are functional. It can work for work-related injuries and not, and you keep employees working. So why would you, and the BWC covers the cost of development. So why would you not want to do a program like this right now? I think I saw somebody grab in on a chat. For those squirrely cases that require handholding, where do those case managers come from? That's a great question. So you can actually request remain at work services through the BWC, and you can use vocational nurse case managers in what's called the Remain at Work program. So that's something you can talk to your MCO about. You can also, I've got a lot of clients that will reach out to nurse case managers directly and just say, hey, we need a little extra handholding on this case, because they recognize that fee for that nurse case manager will help offset the cost of the claim in the future, especially if they become lost time. Thank you for the question. Okay, so let's say you're interested. You'd like to see if you're eligible for a grant. Based on what I understand, most of you would be. All you have to do is complete a TWG, Transitional Work Grant -1 form, which is available on the BWC website. If you go to the BWC website and just put in transitional work grants, it's going to show you that you can do it right online. If you access the my action kit, the toolkit, I have actually a form there for you as well. You want to identify a developer. Like Jim said, there's like 60 of us on that on the list that is by the BWC. We're certified by the Ohio BWC to understand what they're looking for and what they are needing for you to be eligible for this grant. So you do have to work with a certified developer. And like the company that, I work with, we have certified developers all over the state. And then I always ask, let's provide a list of those job titles to the developer. If you have any, some of you have an existing transitional work program, or maybe like a return to work. I often see just a one pager that kind of says it's a return to work program. And what they can do. I like to kind of see what you're already doing. And then you just schedule a date to begin. The developers are really doing the heavy lifting. Yes, we need to have a couple of conversations with you. We need to come out to your work site and validate any functional job analysis, but it doesn't have to take a lot of your time. It's really on the developer to put all of these things together. So I'm going to stop here and ask for some questions before I make some of my final comments. I do have a couple of final things to talk about. So I'm going to see if there's any questions. I don't know if you guys want to even just take yourself off mute and ask a question, that would be okay too. Jim put the link to the Transitional Work Program grant in the chat, which is awesome. I appreciate that. That'll make it super easy for you guys. Don't hesitate to just apply. You have plenty of time. Like, let's say you're, some of you are HR people and you're getting into open enrollment and timing isn't good. You'd rather wait till January. No big deal. Just, apply now so that you're good for it. Find your developer and work with the developer and say, hey, I want to do this, but I want to wait till January. Great. There's lots of developers that would be happy to put you on their schedule. Does our plan need to be developed again if we renewed in June, or is that automatic? I'm not sure what you're talking about. If you actually applied for a grant in June, then that would be in this grant year. Or if you're talking about applying for the bonus program, my suggestion is if it's been more than 5 years since you developed your transitional work program, I would at least have the developer review it for you so that you can add some of these things in, like making sure on-site therapy and field nurse case manager services are part of your program if that's something that you're interested in. I hope I answered that question. Can you recommend a sample transitional work template if you want to do it yourself? The BWC does have one. And if the grants are generally eligible for employers that have a few more employees. Like if you have only 10 or 15 employees, you might want to work with the BWC directly and look at their template. That's totally fine. I will tell you that the template that we use, some of the developers have put their own spin on transitional work. I work directly with a physical therapist, doctor of physical therapy, and he and I have come up with what we think it gives you some of the best tools in your program. Other developers might look at things a little bit differently. That's okay too, but you can certainly find a template working with the Bureau. And you're talking about the bonus program and you're looking into that. And that's actually a great segue. Thank you, Laura, into my final comments. If there aren't any other questions, I'm going to go ahead and look at some final comments here. And that is the Transitional Work Bonus Program. If you have not taken advantage of the Transitional Work Bonus Program, now is the time to do it. So what am I talking about? If you have a written, documented transitional work program that you can show to the BWC that you have, they will allow you into the bonus program. Guess what? It's another form you have to fill out to apply. Because that's how they do things. This particular discount program is back-ended, meaning after you do all the transitional work services, you request a discount. But you have to be part of the bonus program in order to even apply to get the discount. So you need to complete this form, the Transitional Work Bonus-1 form, TWB-1, and it's again on the BWC website to show that you've used your transitional work program. So you have an injured worker, they get released to modified duty, you have them do the modified duty, you give a little information back, the employee has to sign that they actually participated and how long they participated, and then you send that into the BWC. If you do that, it's up to 10% off your next premium. And for some of you, that can be significant. The BWC says since they've been doing this program, which I think started in like 2012 or 13, something like that, they've been giving anywhere from $1 to $4 million back to employers just through this bonus program. So it's really a good one. And let me just show you a couple of examples that will show you how the return on investment works. So this comes right from the BWC developer slide deck that we were recently, re-educated and recertified on transitional work. Here's a transit authority employer, had a transitional work grant for $3,500, got 100% reimbursed. They used their program. the BWC allowed a 7.5% bonus program. There might have been a component of the program that they didn't actually use, and that's why it wasn't the full 10%. But the bonus payment was $46,000. And here's a couple of cities, again, put a grant in, they put a program in place, wrote up, it had their grant, they used their grant, had the developer either develop a new program or review their existing program. They each got a 10% discount, giving them $40,000 and $35,000 back off of their premium. So these can be significant policies. So I want to thank you for your time today. Now is the time to relook at your transitional work programs. And again, if I suggest all of you go ahead and think about applying now, even if you're not sure you want to get started right now. But if you apply, and you can use it over the next, I'm sure longer than a year, but you want to make sure that you start the process maybe within the next 6 months or something like that. Make sure you get your application in while you're thinking about it so that you can start saving that extra money today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Shauna. We again, I know I greatly appreciate you coming on a short notice. Great message, good program. I utilized that when I was with my previous employer, so it is a good program, and encourage everyone to utilize that. Just a housekeeping notes. Just a reminder that next month, October 6th, believe it or not, it is October 6th, Wednesday, October 6th. Is the mega meeting through the BWC. So please get on and register for that meeting. Again, reminder, it is Wednesday, so we're not going to have our meeting the second Tuesday of the month. It will be the BWC meeting on October 6th. And then we will be back together again in November, right before Thanksgiving and Christmas, believe it or not. So again, I cannot thank you enough, Shauna, for coming through for us. I greatly appreciate it. And for everyone else, be safe out there. Any questions or issues concerning this topic or previous ones, please don't hesitate to reach out to the steering committee. Any questions with COVID, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, or even Jim may be able to add his insight on it as well. So stay safe out there, and we will talk with everyone next month. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Sean. That was awesome. It was so good that you're going to have to do my next, my other two safety counselors.
I'm happy to help you out any way I can, Jim. Thank you.
All right, cool. Bye now.
Okay, bye.